Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Amanda and today I'm doing a video that is a little bit different from what I normally do. I have a huge stack of eyeshadow palettes in front of me and basically I'm gonna go through everyone and tell you which ones I am keeping and which ones I am throwing away. Okay, and when I say throwing away, I'm being a little bit dramatic because I'm not actually going to throw away all of these palettes. I'm gonna donate these, give them to friends, family, whatever. There are some I'm gonna throw away because I will admit there are some old palettes in this pile. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit how long I've been holding on to some of these strictly for sentimental value. So I'm hoping to offload a ton of palettes today. And yeah, I'm excited to go through all my palettes together and talk about which ones I love and I think are worth keeping and which ones that, yeah, I'm just ready to let go and move on from. Before moving on into the video, please do not forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any future videos from me. It really does help me out a lot and it really supports my channel. So thank you so much. Let's get into the video. Oh, where do I even start? Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so many palettes in front of me. I think I'm gonna start with my newest purchase. I don't purchase many eyeshadow palettes these days because I have such a big collection and I just feel like I have a lot of the colors that I need, but I did get influenced into buying this Makeup by Mario Master Mattes eyeshadow palette. I've been using it for a little while. I really do like the color story. I think the all mattes is really nice. I think they have a good variety of like a really light matte tone to a really deep black. Is this worth the money? How much did I even pay for this? So I bought this palette on Sephora for $64 and it comes with 12 shades, all matte. I actually do like how small and compact it is. Do I think this is a good palette? Yes. Do I use it? Yes. Will I continue to use it? Yes. It serves its purpose. I'll hold on to this one. Okay, so I'm actually going to move on into a palette that I think is slightly comparable to the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette. Although it's not all matte, I actually do really love the matte shades and I really do use this palette all the time. This is the Natasha Denona Biba Natural palette. So this palette runs for $170. And I know that is a lot. So if you are on a budget, definitely go for something like the Makeup by Mario or even the next palette I'm going to show you. I will say the formulation of these eyeshadows are unlike anything I have ever tried. They are absolutely gorgeous, perfection, blendable, buttery, just really incredible eyeshadows. So in that sense, I think they are worth a higher price point, $170. Debatable. It's a really good palette, don't get me wrong. Anyways, final thoughts on the Natasha Denona palette. I will be keeping it. I think it's beautiful. If you have the money to invest in a palette like this, I do think it's worth the investment. They are just some of the most luxurious, beautiful shadows I've ever tried. And this color story in particular is just perfect in my opinion. So I will be keeping this palette. So sticking to the neutral matte theme, I just received this palette from Colourpop. This is their Gone Matte Pressed Powder palette. This is what it looks like. It comes with a ton of matte shadows and I really actually like this palette a lot. I'm gonna be keeping this one. This is a great alternative for the last two that I showed you, the Natasha Denona Biba. Obviously you're not getting the shimmers in here, but that's okay. This is a great alternative for the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette. It's just so good and it comes with so many shades and honestly, they apply really nicely and blend really nicely. You've got some warm browns, some cooler browns, some pinky kind of tones, plums, and then like some smoky grays. So you really just get everything in this palette. By the way, I live in Canada, so all the prices I'm going to be giving you are in Canadian dollars, but this palette is $44.90 Canadian and you get so many shades. This comes with 30 eyeshadow shades. So if you're looking for an affordable matte eyeshadow palette that just covers all your bases, definitely get this one. I will be hanging on to this and I will continue to be testing this one out. So moving right along, I have another all matte neutral eyeshadow palette. This one is by Jason Wu. This is their Flora 9 Matte Agave eyeshadow palette. And as you can see, it's just some really nice neutrals. I do not reach for this as much as I thought I would, which is funny. Honestly, it's nothing against this formula, nothing against this palette. This is $15. for these 9 eyeshadows, and they're honestly really pretty nice neutrals, especially for someone with fair skin. I think these shades up here are really nice. Shades that I would normally reach for. So I'm having a really hard time with this. I was pretty convinced that I was gonna let this palette go, but I kind of want to keep it. Ugh. These shadows are really great, especially if you're on a budget. These shadows are incredible, really nice to blend. I just don't reach for it that much. I have other shadows that I just reach for more often that I prefer, and so that's why I think I'm gonna put this in the maybe pile. I don't know. All right, so the next palette I have here is from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Super Nudes Easy Eye palette, and there are 6 shades in here, just neutrals like this, and to be quite honest, I just don't really reach for this that much. I've tried this a few times, it's nice. The shadows themselves are really pretty. It's just the colors. I'm not really a huge fan of this, and I do love Charlotte Tilbury, I really do, but this palette just isn't it for me, so I'm going to be giving this away to a friend who will probably get a lot more use than I out of it. All right, so the next palette we have here is really near and dear to my heart. So much so that I've been holding on to it for years and not using it at all, just keeping it in my collection for what reason, I don't know. This is the Tarte Pro palette, and it's actually, mine is broken. This just like comes right off, but if any of you were kind of into makeup back in the day, you will know this palette really was a very popular palette. As you can see, I've hit pan on a ton of these shades. I really did use this so much for so long. I just loved this palette, and it just makes me sad to let it go, but I'm going to be letting it go. It is old, and I haven't used it in a long time for that reason, but I was just holding on to it because, yeah, this is one of the first palettes I really fell in love with, and I just, yeah. Bye, Tarte Pro palette, you were so good to me. Okay, so there's 2 palettes I let go of. This is already really hard for me. I can see all these palettes in front of me, and I'm just like, should I stop filming this video? I don't actually want to give away any of these. Can I just hoard this makeup forever? No. Moving on to another Charlotte Tilbury palette. This one I am keeping. I really, really love this palette. I think it is just a great overall palette, and you get a lot in it. So this is the Instant Look of Love in a palette, Pretty Blush Beauty. So this is marketed as like a 5-minute face on the go, and it really is that. I love the way this palette is set up. We have a really pretty shimmer color. It's like a very wet shimmery color. A really great lid color, some contour for the eye, we have face contour, we have like face highlight, blush, powder, you have everything in this palette. And so I will be holding on to this. I have taken this traveling before, and I just kind of used it for everything, and it worked really great. So you can still buy this palette. It is 95 Canadian dollars. I had this one sent to me. I'm so grateful that I had it sent to me. I do love it, but I will say I really do think it is worth the $95. You will get a lot of use out of this palette, and I believe it comes in a deeper tone as well. So if you have a deeper skin tone, do some looking and get the deeper one. I think they're really beautiful. And yeah, I'm gonna be holding on to it. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the palette that I just wanna get out of the way because I have a confession. So this is the first ever palette that I bought for myself. That was a long time ago. Drum roll, please. This is the Urban Decay Naked Original palette. I have held on to this for years. I don't even want to tell you how long I've held on to this, but I probably haven't touched it in like 3 years. Honestly, it's just been sitting, but I just, couldn't let it go because it has so much like sentimental value to me. It's like my first palette I ever got, and like, it's so well loved. It's just like, I don't know, I still love this color story. I just love it so much. This palette has such a special place in my heart, but I'm gonna be letting it go, sadly. You guys wanna know something funny? Actually, I loved this palette so much that I got Half Baked and Smog in single eyeshadows. For what reason? I don't know. Like, I didn't even hit pan in these. I just like preemptively bought extras because I figured I was going to run out. But yeah, clearly I didn't. I just had an obsession with this palette. I still really love it, but it's old. It's time to go. So farewell, Naked Original palette. One of my first loves. So this is a newer palette for me, but this is something that has really become a staple in my collection. This is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette, and I will show you the colors inside. How beautiful are these neutrals, and I also really like how it comes with 2 cream shadows. I haven't seen that done very often, so I thought that was really unique. But yeah, this is a really great mixture of mattes and shimmers. So this palette is $87, And I think it's a little bit pricey, but I will say you get a lot of product in here. You get a lot of shades. The quality is really incredible. So if you're looking for just a nice neutral palette with a mixture of mattes, shimmers, and some cream shadows that you can even use for liner or a shadow base, I do honestly really recommend this palette. I've been getting a ton of use out of it. I'm continually reaching for it. So yes, I will be keeping this palette. Okay, so this one is a tough one for me. This is the Anastasia Soft Glam eyeshadow palette. And I do really like the colors. They are really pretty, but as you can see, I haven't really reached for this palette very much. I haven't used many of the colors at all. The shadow palette didn't blow me away, but the shadows are really pretty. And honestly, I'm gonna give this to a friend because it's pretty much brand new. And I think the average person who probably doesn't have as large of a collection as me could use this palette, make a ton of looks out of it, and probably reach for it a lot more than me. For me personally, I just don't reach for it very often. Okay, so next up I have a really fun palette that I have been loving for a very long time and I will be holding on to it. This is the Colourpop So Jaded palette, and Kathleen Lights made this palette in collaboration with Colourpop, and look at these shades. So pretty, so unique. Okay, so standout shades for me is this peridot color. I don't know if the camera is gonna do it justice, but it's this like beautiful greeny yellow. Is it peridot or peridot? I think it's peridot. Whatever. But yeah, I think the shimmer shades in this palette are so beautiful and it's just really fun. It's a fun palette to reach to when I want to play with a little bit of color, but I feel like all the shades in here you can make really wearable. This palette is definitely getting a little bit old, but the shades still work totally fine. They don't sell this Colourpop palette anymore, but if you look on their website, I'm sure you can find like a very similar kind of color story. Another palette I'm going to be letting go of today is my Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. This palette has been through some things. It's looking really crusty. I've had this palette for a while. I actually used it religiously for quite a long time and did a ton of looks out of it, but it's getting old. I don't really use it anymore. The color story doesn't really speak to me. Again, it's just like a lot of really warm shades that I don't usually gravitate towards. So I'm gonna be letting this go. Goodbye, Modern Renaissance. You were good to me while you lasted. All right, so this palette I love. I was so excited when I received this in PR. I love these shades. I think they're so cool. I love the more bold shades. I've also never really seen a shade quite like this 1989 shade. Super pretty peachy shade. All these neutrals over here are just gorgeous. I reach for this palette often and I definitely will be holding on to it. The formula of these shadows is awesome. It has like a built-in primer, so you don't have to use eyeshadow primer. You have a good mix of mattes and shimmers in this palette, which I also appreciate. So I don't know if this is the real price. They are selling it at London Drugs and it is listed as $51 for this palette. If it is $51, I think that is a very fair price for this palette. You get a ton of shades, ton of product, and such a cool and unique color story. So yeah, I will be holding on to this. If you can buy it, get your hands on it for sure. I'm pretty sure it's limited edition, so don't sleep on this one. Okay, so this palette is ancient. This is my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. I've had this for years, so I really should let it go, but honestly, I just love the shades. This is such a pretty palette. If they still sell it, I would repurchase this palette. This is gorgeous. You have a ton of shimmers, a ton of mattes. They smell so good. It still smells good after all of these years. I got a ton of use out of this. I really do love this palette. The formula is beautiful. And yeah, so I will be letting go of this, unfortunately, strictly because it's old and I need to just stop holding on to things for like nostalgia. I really need to just let it go. I haven't used this in a few years. So yeah, I will be saying goodbye to my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette today, but great palette. I might even go and repurchase. You guys, should I repurchase this palette? Do they still even sell it? I don't know. All right, so moving on into some color, I have this palette by NYX. This is their Ultimate Shadow palette in the shade Brights. And this is actually a really good palette. Honestly, it has kind of everything you need. As far as colors go, that's basically why I bought this palette. I think it was about $20 or something in that range, which I thought was really good for all of these colors. I will admit the formulation isn't anything like revolutionary, but the shadows work. And if you want to create some cool colored looks and you're just kind of looking to dip your toes into colored eyeshadow, I think this is a really good palette to do that. So I'm going to be keeping this, although I don't use it often. I think for when I do want to play with color, I will definitely be reaching for this. So moving on, these are pretty old, but I still honestly think they are great palettes. These are the Lorac Pro palettes. So the Lorac Pro I got quite a bit ago. This is what it looks like. It's a really great palette. Honestly, they don't sell it anymore. Unfortunately, I think I will be letting this palette go despite that I love all of these shades. You can see I've hit pan in a ton of these. I think the formulation of these palettes are really amazing. And this one in particular, I just really loved the shade range. I used all the mattes. The shimmers were really gorgeous. You can see I like really have used a lot of these ones. The reason I'm getting rid of this one is just simply because it's a little bit old. I don't really reach for it anymore for that reason, but if I could repurchase it, I would repurchase it, and I think that this is a fantastic palette. But I will be saying goodbye to my original Lorac Pro palette, unfortunately. And to touch on the Lorac Pro 2 palette, this one is also really nice. It's definitely got a different color story that I don't reach for as often. I did get this one more recently, so I think I'm gonna hang on to it still. I think a lot of the matte shades are really beautiful, like this Nectar shade in here is really nice. It's got a really pretty silver in here. All of these shimmer shadows here are really beautiful, and I do reach for them from time to time. So I'm gonna hold on to this. I do prefer the other color story for the Lorac palette, but if you have the opportunity to try some palettes from Lorac, I think that they are really good and underrated, honestly. I don't know if I said this, but I will be keeping this palette for now. All right, so this is more of a luxury palette. This is a Dior Backstage eyeshadow palette. This is in the shade 001 Warm Neutrals. I do really enjoy this palette, although I will say I don't reach for it as much as I would like to. I used to reach for it a lot more. I used to use these dark shades for eyeliner a lot. I find that the Dior Backstage formulas, especially like the powder products, they seem to me like more of a like gel powder. So they actually apply kind of like creams, but they blend like a beautiful silky buttery powder, which is why I love the Dior Backstage line. I would be curious to try some other colors just because, I don't know, I feel like some of these shades are really similar. Like these two shades here are very, very similar. These two center shades, the shimmers, are pretty similar. I do really like this shimmery kind of like champagne color and this matte color here. It's really nice. This is a really nice crease color. So with that being said, I think I'm going to hold on to this palette for now. All right, so the next palette we have is pretty fun. This is a neon palette. This is from Huda Beauty, and this is the first palette I actually got from her line, and the first shadows I actually tried from her. I never really got into the Huda eyeshadow palettes when they were all the rage, but I recently, not too long ago, bought this neon palette from Huda. I just thought the colors were really cool. I didn't really have anything neon like this. I'm gonna hold on to this because, again, I don't really have anything else like this in my collection. You get 9 shades in here, and they're all right, so I'm gonna keep it. This one is a little bit tough for me. This is the Natasha Denona Retro palette, and I do really like this palette. I think it's beautiful. The only thing I'm kind of like have some conflict in my head is that I really don't reach for it very much, but when I do, I'm really happy with the quality of the shadows, and the color story is really unique. It's a lot of really warm, kind of red auburn colors, pink tones. I love the shimmers in this palette. I use the shimmers probably the most often. Honestly, I don't know why I don't reach for this more. You know, I think I'm gonna hang on to this because it's a really luxurious palette. I was so grateful to receive this palette and actually work with Natasha Denona on the launch of this palette. I think I'm going to try and get a little creative and dig into this palette. I need to be a little bit better about using shades that are out of my comfort zone, and I think just doing makeups that are a little bit different, which is probably why I'm not reaching for this very much. I don't typically wear these colors, But I will say you can create a lot of looks with this palette. If you like tones like this, definitely pick this palette up. This palette is a newer one from Natasha Denona, and it is $87. This isn't too crazy of a price point, considering her other palettes. Obviously, like the Viva palette is $170. The size of these shadows is a little bit smaller than her other palettes, which is honestly fine because when are you really going to use an entire eyeshadow palette? I have never done that. I would love to though, that'd be so satisfying. But yeah, this is a little bit smaller, a little bit less of a high price point, and I think a lot of these shades are really wearable. So I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna see if I can get this into my regular rotation. So I have another palette that I think I'm gonna be getting rid of. I'm probably just gonna give this to a friend or a family member because this is basically brand new and it's super beautiful and luxury, and I'm sure someone else would enjoy this more than me. But this is a Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palette, and I'm a big fan of Charlotte Tilbury. I really am, but I don't reach for this palette. This is their luxury color-coded eyeshadows, okay? And it's in the shade Super Blue. So as you can see, you have two really pretty neutral shades up here. They don't like really work on me for some reason, like just something with my skin tone. I just don't find they're super flattering. And then underneath you have a shimmery blue and a navy blue, and to be honest, I just don't reach for these colors very often, and I wasn't like crazy impressed with the pigmentation of these specific shadows. So I'm going to be letting this guy go. Yeah. On the contrary, I do have another Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palette that I actually do really like. I just got this in PR. This is the Pillow Talk Dreams Luxury Palette. It looks like this, and it's kind of a deeper version of the other Pillow Talk palette they had. I just think these two matte shades here are really pretty. I haven't played too much with these two shades over here. Yeah, I'm gonna be hanging on to this and playing with this one a little bit more. Oh, and just so you know, these guys run for $66 for 4 shades. Do I think it's a little bit pricey? I do think it's a little bit pricey, but Charlotte Tilbury is such a luxury brand and she's pretty iconic, so what can you do? So this is another shadow palette that I recently got this year. This is the Nars CLIMAX eyeshadow palette, and my first impression of this palette actually wasn't that good. I didn't really think I was going to use this as much as I did, but yeah, I actually really like this palette. I've done a lot of really pretty looks with this palette. I love this kind of deep plum color as an eyeliner, and these shimmers are really beautiful. And these top 2 shades right here are really nice to just kind of contour the eyes and build a little bit of dimension. Yeah, I think I'm gonna hold on to this one. I like it more than I thought I would. All right, so that is it for the eyeshadows that I'm keeping in decluttering. I am keeping these guys, and I'm getting rid of all these. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It is honestly long overdue, and this was really fun. So let me know if you guys want me to do more decluttering videos. If you guys would watch more of this stuff, definitely let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this tutorial today, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.